Thank you. I recently made a career change, but I used to work as a truck driver. I was on a long haul driving through the heart of the Midwest. It was getting dark and it had been a long day. The air was chilly and the wind whistled through the 2-inch space at the top of my window. It was a lonely road, and I hadn't seen another vehicle for a while. However, I eventually noticed a car in my rearview mirror. I didn't care at first, but as I kept driving, the car stayed right behind me. Cars are usually pretty eager to get past me. I had to strictly follow the speed limit, but most cars speed at least a little. It seemed like the car was following me, but I wasn't sure. After around 20 minutes. The car was still there. That's when I noticed a sign for our stop. It figured it was time for a break anyway. It thought I might even call it a night. Actually, I decided to pull into the stop to see if the car would follow when I parked my truck. The car parked right next to me. That was extremely strange because there are separate sections for the trucks and cars weren't supposed to be there. I got out of my truck and walked around to the front of the car. I could hear its engine idling, and it turned to see the driver staring at me. The car was new. It's probably 2005, and it was a Toyota. The color was hard to tell for sure in the dark, but it was some kind of gray or silver. There was a large dent in the right fender. I waved at the driver, cautiously trying to get his attention, but he didn't answer. He just stared straight ahead. I couldn't tell much about the guy except that he was around my age and wore glasses. He also had dark hair and mustaches. Suddenly, the car's engine roared to life and it started to roll towards me. I was still standing in front of it. I jumped out of the way just in time. It turned to look at the car, and the brake lights glowed bright. The car was reversing towards me quickly. It managed to hide behind my truck while I was hidden. I heard the car screech to a halt, and then it seemed to speed away. I was left standing in the middle of the truck stop, confused and scared. What had just happened? Why that car just tried to run me over? I decided to call the police. I told them what I could, but I didn't have much to goon. I wasn't able to remember the license plate event. Oh, I did make an effort to look at it as she drove away. I decided not to stay there that night. I was too nervous that the car would come back and do something to me. It was another few hours before I was able to stop for the night, and by then it was really late. He was very anxious the next day every time I stopped for gas or food. I was on high alert, scanning the area for any sign of that car. That day I was caught in a traffic jam, and highways like this one that almost always means that there's an accident up ahead. It wasn't acidy during rush hour or anything. When I finally passed the accident, I looked over and saw what I was pretty sure was that car from the other night. It was on the back of a flatbed truck with another cart. The accident looked pretty serious. I scanned the area for that creepy guy, but I couldn't see him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was taken to the hospital or worse. I still don't know what that guy was up to out there. I think he caused that accident. That is the one. I think he did it on purpose, but I may never know why. Stranger encounter. I had a scary encounter with a stranger a few years ago, and that's what this story is about. I live in a different city than my parents, and I would often make an 8-hour drive at least once or twice a year to visit them. I read of the trip in a single day, starting in the morning or early afternoon. It was late October. I was over halfway there, and the sun was starting to casting an orange glow on the landscape as they drove down the quiet road. I saw a transport truck pulled over to the side. Its hazards were flashing at first. I wasn't sure if anyone was inside, but as I got closer, I saw that the driver's door was slightly open. I pulled over thinking that maybe someone needed help. I stepped out of my car and walked over to the track. There was noon inside, but I noticed that there was a wooded area next to the truck. I called out, "Hello, is anyone there?" But there was no response. As I turned to walk back to my car, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and saw a man standing there. He was holding a gun and pointing it right at me. He was a big man, probably only 5'10", but muscular. The man didn't say anything, but it kept his gun trained on me. I slowly backed away from him. Me hands up, I was too scared to speak and I could barely think. I kept backing away until I was at my car. I didn't take my eyes off the man the whole time. I carefully opened my car door and got in once I was inside. I locked all the doors and started the engine. I watched the man lower his gun as it started to drive. I looked at my rearview mirror to see the man standing by his truck watching me. I pulled away from the side of the road and drove as fast as I could towards my family's town. My heart was racing as it tried to process what had happened. I had never been in a situation like that before, and it was truly terrifying. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, trying to make sense of it. As I drove, the seriousness of the situation sunk in. The man could have easily shot me or taken my car, but hadn't. Maybe he was just as scared as I was. I figured you must have thought that I was trying to rob him. That's the only explanation that I can't think of. It thought of it more, and now I wonder if that truck driver had something to hide. Maybe there was something in his truck that he didn't want me to see, or maybe he was doing something in the woods at the side of the road that he didn't want anyone to find out about. These are ideas that I had a long time after the actual incident. So I have no idea what is true. I just don't think he would have pointed a gun at me for nothing. It's just hard to understand. When I finally arrived at my family's town, I felt relieved. It told him what happened. They were shocked and scared for him, but also grateful that I made it out okay with Spay. We spent the rest of the evening talking and catching up. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. Mugged at night. This happened last fall and around mid-September. I drive trucks for a living of 10, doing multi-day overnight trips. It was getting late one day and I was feeling exhausted. I knew I had to stop for the night. I pulled into a rest stop off the highway. It was a small stop with space for only 3 or 4 trucks. There was one other truck there and probably 4 or 5 cars in the parking lot. There was a small washroom with a paid shower, and there was also a restaurant. I parked my truck and went in for a shower, and I had dinner at the restaurant. After that, I went into the back of my cab and fell asleep. I was suddenly awakened by the sound of my own voices saying, "I really need to pee," not literally, but I did need to pee. I opened my eyes and looked at my watch. It was 3 a.m. Didn't want to get up, but there was no choice. I crawled out of my truck and made my way to the washroom. As I was washing my hands, I heard footsteps approaching. I thought that was strange because I hadn't seen anyone else when I got up. It made me way out and walked back towards my truck. When I got close, I saw a woman standing in front of my track. He was about 6 feet tall with dark hair. He was wearing a dirty oversized hoodie and baggy jeans. There was a light to his right which was casting a large shadow over most of his body. It tried to move past him to get back to my truck, but it blocked my way. He had a mean look in his eyes and I knew it had bad intentions. Before I could say anything, he pulled out a knife and pointed it at me. "Give me your wallet." Head demanded. I was scared out of my mind, but I stayed calm. As slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet, and I handed it to him, hurried through it, taking all my cash and credit cards. So it wasn't much, maybe $30. "Is that all you've got?" the growled. I told him it was, but hadn't believed me. He searched through my pockets and found my cell phone. Luckily, I had left my keys in the truck, the best habit, but in this case it served me well. The man looked at my phone for a minute, and then ordered me to unlock it. I hesitated. That phone was my only lifeline. Without that, I would have no way to call for help. It told him that I would unlock it, and then it took a step back and bolted towards my truck. I could hear him chasing after me, but I was faster. I jumped into the cab of my truck and locked all the doors. He saw the man standing outside still holding the knife. He banged on the window and shouted obscenities at me. I grabbed my cell phone and called. The police had told him what happened and gave them the location of the rest stop. I looked out my window and the man was gone. I wasn't sure how he had gotten to the rest stop though. None of the trucks or cars had moved since the man disappeared. So he couldn't have gotten far. It felt like an eternity before the police arrived, but in reality it was only a few minutes. He saw the flashing lights and then a police car pulled up beside me. I spoke to the officers when they arrived. They told me to wait my truck while they searched the area, and I did what they told me. After around half an hour, Thiemann was caught. I'm still not sure where he was hiding or where he was running to, and I still don't know how we got to the stop in the first place. Most confusing though is what was he doing on the highway at 3 in the morning with not truck or car. It was really unusual. I barely slept for the rest of the night. It was already 4 a.m. by the time I was done with the police. Tried to relax in my truck for an hour or so, and then the sun came up and I continued my journey. I never heard anything about what happened to that guy. I was a long way from home and I couldn't be bothered to follow up on it. The hitchhiker. I work as a truck driver. It was an afternoon in April. My eyes were scanning the road ahead of me in my line of work. I've seen my fair share of weird things on the road, but on this day something felt different. The sun was high in the sky and the air was thick with humidity. It had been a day or two since I had really talked to anyone, and my loneliness was getting tough to deal with. That's when I saw where a young woman with long curly hair, her thumb outstretched in a desperate attempt to hitch a ride. She wore blue jeans and hooded sweatshirts. She had a small backpack with a single strap over her right shoulder, is lowered down and pulled over to the side of the road. Then I rolled down my window and eat a lift. I asked. She nodded and climbed into the cab of my truck, her eyes darting nervously behind her. She seemed nervous at the time. I thought she must be new to hitchhiking. I'm not an intimidating person by any means, but I was a stranger, so it would be understandable. She seemed agitated and kept glancing out the window as if she was expecting someone to jump out at any moment as we drove on. I noticed the car behind. It was a police car, but the lights were off, so I thought it was okay. Just then I heard a siren and saw the lights flashing. I was being pulled over. I stopped right away that moment. I thought I was in trouble for picking up a hitchhiker. It is technically illegal where I live. My truck came to a stop, and I waited for the officer to approach me, but to my surprise, when the officer approached the truck, had demanded the woman get out. As she stepped out, her hands were shaking and her face was flushed. I watched in confusion as the officer handcuffed her and led her to the squad car. It wasn't until I heard him radioing in a robbery at a nearby rest stop that I realized what had happened. She had robbed a store and was using my truck as her getaway vehicle. The officer put the woman in the back of the police car and then came to talk to me. He told me that I shouldn't pick up hitchhikers, but simply gave me warning notice. I was a little shaken by the experience, but it wasn't so bad. The really scary thing happened when I heard about the story on the news. It turned out that the woman has shot a man in the robbery. She has a gun in her backpack when she was in my truck. Up until then it was a good story for parties, but afterwards I was genuinely creeped out.